My name is Anne-Marie Rowley and I teach yoga. It's my passion. I've called my company Cool, Calm and Collected. And it's about nurturing people, and so I take people on tour to beautiful places, teach them yoga, look after them. Over my life I always wondered what it was. And I realised quite recently that I've actually been in it quite a few times. And I can go back to when I was 8 years of age. And I was performing in The King and I was one of the children. And I adore dancing, I adore anything that's creative. And I was asked to play Buddha, would you believe? In the excerpt where it's Uncle Tom's Cabin, it's a ballet. And at the age of 8 I had to climb up this huge stairs with heaven, clouds on it, and sit up as Buddha at 8. I thought I was in heaven, and I remember I could tell you every single thing about that ballet and about being so calm and reflecting on this whole beautiful scene, and then everything closed in around me, and I can remember being right in the moment at 8 years of age. I remember thinking, this is pure joy. Now that's one. Many years later, in fact only 2 years ago, I was in India and I just led a tour around India in the state of Kerala, and all my clients had left and I had a couple of days to myself, and I have friends in Kerala. And one of them invited me to his home to meet some of his friends from all over the world actually. It was a very interesting night, and I had to get to his home alone. And in order to do that, I had to cross a rice paddy field, as you do in India, and I had to go along this...
At night time?
And I had to go along this tiny, tiny little bit of earth, if you can imagine a pathway through these fields, and lotus ponds. And it was a very warm, balmy night, beautiful weather. And it was the time of sunset, so it was getting quite dark, and in the distance I could hear the pujas, the prayers and the chanting and the bells. Then I could hear all the creatures around me of night, and also the aromas of the perfumes around. The lotus doesn't have that, but many flowers were around. And then I remember looking and seeing the lotus flowers. It was quite extraordinary. But what happened is, as I was walking, very attentively I might add, along this pathway, all of a sudden everything closed in on me. I can't express it, it's very hard to express. But it was like time stood still, or had it stretched. I was right in the moment. I knew I was meant to be exactly where I was. I felt there was something bigger than me, and I felt pure joy. And I remember thinking, this is what the zone is. I really understood it then, and I often experience it when I'm teaching as well. It's a very good question, and I'm just going to reflect very briefly. Well, I'll leave last night to speak about in a moment, but I go into that zone when I'm teaching. And so if we look at what it is, the elements that are important for that, they would be that I'm in a particularly pretty place. I need to have sunlight. It's very big for me, or light. You know, to be surrounded by light. I mean, of course it could be nighttime, but then I like candles. You know, I love light. And I think music is an incredibly soothing thing in your life, and I'm a music buff, so I would have really gorgeous music. And again, it's about the people who you're surrounded by, and without doubt, how I would go into it is I really focus on my breathing for a while. I do a little bit of meditation. But I go into that meditative state when I'm moving and teaching. And what that is for me is that I'm absolutely in the moment. I can't be anywhere else. I'm focusing on my students and my clients. I'm working with them, and I need to pass on my peace, I guess, to these people. and also I need to make sure that they are in sync and that they're okay, that they're well, and that they're not doing anything outrageous, which people can tend to do in yoga. You know, they all think you have to put your foot around your neck. And so I'm looking after them. So I'm focusing on them, but I also have to keep myself incredibly balanced. I would call it in harmony with everything. So I'm in harmony with the breath, the body and the mind. So I have to prepare for that, and so I then go into the class and I find as I'm doing the postures with my students, I go into that zone. I go into that incredible, well, into the now, right into the moment. Not carrying any burden of the past with you, not fearing anything in the future, not thinking about either. You're just, it is as it is. You are right there now. When you are in the moment, you're sort of out of your headspace. So you really slow your thinking process down, and you know, so much of that's just nonsense anyway. So when you come into that sort of focus, I'm not saying all thinking's nonsense, but a lot of it's just peripheral, isn't it? And so when you come into it, you think, okay, how am I going to come out of my headspace? And how you do that is come into your body, and therefore you can only do that by sensing. So immediately everything around you, I mean, I can sense space. And so you start to sense everything around you. You sense the breath, you sense textures beneath you, you sense space, all of those things. And that, when you're in your senses, really working in your senses, you're really out of your head. So you're absolutely in that instant. And it might flicker and go, and then it can come back again, because you do have some control over that. And I'm not suggesting for anyone to sit and meditate for an hour. In fact, it's virtually impossible for most. But it's when you go, even a few split seconds, you go into the spaces between the thoughts, or the pauses between the breaths, whatever you want to call it. It's the most content, peaceful, joyful instant. And also creative. You come out of it. When you come out of it, I find that I'm so much more creative, more efficient, more productive. Last night, I was taken into the zone. I went to see Graham Murphy's Swan Lake in Melbourne, and no one could have prepared me for how magnificent it was. It was sublime, actually. I know a little bit about ballet, and I don't look at it from a technical perspective. I looked at it from an overall perspective, but I have to say, it was so flawless and so beautiful. And all night my spine was tingling. And then the eyes kept welling up. Every few scenes, my eyes would just well up, and I'd have to dry them and just watch it. I thought, who created this? Who created this beautiful thing? And what happened is, of course, it's very long. It's actually quite long. It has several acts and 2 intervals. And whilst I was watching it, I was absolutely in there. Anything could have burnt down around me and I wouldn't have known, because I was so completely focused on this sheer beauty. It was really quite interesting. I haven't been taken into the zone in that way in entertainment for a long, long time. It was just so beautiful. It was breathtaking. And I looked around, I spoke to people around me, they all felt the same. So we can all be taken into that too in some way. That pure focus and that sheer beauty.